In 1965, hardly any individuals accept that the contention in Vietnam would transform into a full-scale war. One of the principal indications of what lies ahead is America's besieging of mystery focuses inside Laos. Military contender jets fly over a country cultivating region around mid-afternoon, dropping bombs all around the fields, annihilating each shield and house in its way. On board the USS officer in the Bay of Tonkin, pilot Dengler and his naval force group join in. A pre-mission instructions. The group should fly over the northern piece of Vietnam to remove the adversary's stockpile line. Since the mission is characterized, the crew is reminded that they should not talk about it to anybody, not even their family and friends and family. To get ready for their main goal, the crew watches a short film about how to get by in the wild, which clarifies how for stowaway with leaves and certainly stand out. In any case, they generally think that it is absurd. They are additionally permitted to demand acclamations to the gear and proportions they are taking with them, so Dengler requests a mystery fold on his naval force boots to cover his American identification during the mission. At the last instructions, the crew chief gives his last updates about the security of their activities. He cautions the crew against the utilization of their tactical radio out on the field when they end up in peril on the grounds that the military has been getting reports that the foes have had the option to catch their radio transmissions, utilizing them to bait heroes into a snare. During the gathering, Dengler is picked as the mission chief. Upon the arrival of the mission, Dengler and his closest companions do an old custom and together they lay their brows on the wall as they wish each other best of luck. Then 4 contender jets set out on air, heading towards Laos in North Vietnam. At the point when the crew begins bombarding the assigned region, local people quickly fire back, and Dengler's fly gets hit and it starts falling. As the left wing gradually detaches, Dengler utilizes his extraordinary pilot abilities to crash land his fly and leap off to somewhere safe and secure on the ground. Lao foes are as of now coming for him, so Dengler goes through the field to stow away in the wilderness. Recalling the video, he conceals under a heap of plants and doesn't emerge until the warriors leave somewhere new. Then, at that point, he leaves his tactical radio under a heap of leaves prior to going further into the wilderness. In the end, he finds a vacant construction and takes the little food he can track down in a pot. He additionally starts dozing in his plastic pack, continuously covering it with leaves. At the point when he hears a U.S. military helicopter flying by, he is mindful so as to leave his concealing spot. Yet, he needs to allow a nearby family to pass by before really emerging. When he jumps on top of a stone to attempt to definitely stand out with a little mirror, it's past the point of no return and the helicopter is no more. A short time later, Dengler prevents to hydrate from a waterway to assist with the sweltering climate, yet this interruption permits the Lao powers to encompass him and catch him. From the beginning, Dengler is brought to a close by private town where no one communicates in English. Dengler is restricted in the town, and they overlook his supplication for a restroom, so he winds up going in his jeans. The spot. While everybody makes tracks, Dengler stays at the table and gazes at the couple of rice grains that tumbled from a plate, getting a thought. Half a month after the fact, the detainees surprise Dengler by singing the blissful birthday melody to him. What's more, giving him a beverage they made from bugs. Moved by the motion, Dengler chooses to gift them something back. In the first place, he uncovers he made 2 harsh blades out of old projectile housings, and the companions. That supposition where hands he has them and get to keep them. Next, he admits he's been stowing away a touch of rice consistently on the grounds that he's at last made another arrangement. Dengler has seen that the watchmen leave their weapons behind when they have their midday break, so he figures they ought to take those weapons and use them to assume command of the jail camp until they can flag for salvage to the U.S. helicopters. The detainees consent to execute the arrangement on July 4th to give it additional significance, so they have barely a month left. From that point on, they start to notice the gatekeepers to concentrate on their schedules by utilizing Dengler's little mirror through the rooftop. They mark the places of the gatekeepers and their weapons with wood and rocks to remember them, and when one night a watchman nearly discovers them in the act, they imagine it simply a game they made up. With the blades Dengler made, the detainees make a getaway hatch at the floor of their shack. Consistently, Dengler cautiously slips away through that lid to design the way that they will follow and deals with releasing a segment of the external wall. As the days pass, the detainees notice food is turning out to be significantly more scant, albeit the little watchman Dengler become friends with still saves him a little wad of rice. In the long run, they quit bringing them real food and they're served a bowl of worms. All things being equal, Debruin says he'll eat his rice, yet Dengler advises him that he has the nail, so if Debruin eats the rice before they escape, Dengler won't liberate him from the binds to get away with them. He's so persuaded his arrangement will work that he wouldn't fret eating the worms. One morning they hear helicopters flying by, however the gatekeepers take shots at the ground as an advance notice to keep them calm. After the watchmen leave, Martin has a breakdown, and Dengler guarantees they'll be gone soon. At some point, YC here's a discussion between a portion of the gatekeepers. Since YC can communicate in the nearby language, he can decipher, and they find that the gatekeepers plan to kill the detainees and make it seem as though they endeavored to get away. Clearly they're worn out on the absence of food as well, and they need to at last return to their own towns. This causes them to choose to execute the arrangement the following day as opposed to sitting tight for their unique date. The following morning the detainees start the arrangement. They'll be isolated into two gatherings, Dengler and Martin in one, and Debruin with the rest. The two gatherings will go out in isolated bearings and afterward get together simultaneously in the kitchen to repress the gatekeepers. Dengler goes away from the shack first and rapidly gathers the weapons the gatekeepers abandoned. Then, at that point, he takes them back to the gathering. Whenever everyone is furnished, they partition into the two gatherings. However, when Dengler and Martin show up at the kitchen, they are the final stragglers, which isn't sufficient to quell an entirety gathering of warriors. Luckily they think quick and promptly take shots at the gatekeepers, killing every one of them aside from their little companion, who Dengler permits to disappear as gratitude for the rice. Acknowledging they can't remain there according to plan, Dengler and Martin take however much food as could be expected and taken off from the camp. Ultimately they catch Debruin and YC, and Dengler gets dubious when he sees the other two are absent while Debruin has additional weapons in addition to shoes. Debruin swears it's simply a happenstance, so a frustrated Dengler trades some ammunition for Debruin's blade before the two gatherings leave in inverse headings. Dengler and Martin escape into the wilderness to attempt to track down opportunity via Thailand. After a short time, the blustery season starts, so Dengler and Martin can make do with water. Also, their rice. Sadly, when they stop for a midday break, a landslide shocks them from behind and hauls them down the slope, causing them to lose their rice. After loads of strolling, they at last come to the stream, and recollecting the video, they make a pontoon utilizing what nature can give. At first they float away impeccably securely while concealing under leaves, yet tragically, the ebb and flow steers them towards certain rapids that drop into a cascade. Dengler and Martin notice without a moment to spare and swim toward the shore, passing on the pontoon to fall and be annihilated when it crashes on the rocks. Numerous days pass as the team keeps on going through the wilderness, burning through the vast majority of their time wet under the consistent downpour. One evening they find that under their garments there are a lot of liches, and they need to eliminate them individually from their powerless skin horrendously. In a little while, they find a man fishing close by, however shooting could stand out of troopers, so they unobtrusively trust that the angler will leave all things being equal. This causes them to acknowledge they're conveying weapons for no good reason, so they toss them into the waterway to dispose of the additional weight. During this time, they find an old shoe on the ground and Dengler allows Martin to have it, since he's many times feeling powerless and tired, so Dengler needs to keep his soul up in some way. After bunches of strolling, the pair tracks down a neglected town and stops there to rest. At that point a couple of US helicopters fly by, yet regardless of how much Dengler waves and hollers, they don't see him and disappear. Martin is beginning to fly off the handle, so Dengler advises him to rest while he lights a fire with the method he gained from local people and continues to consume the cabins to make a tremendous smoke signal for the helicopters. Tragically, the Americans botch them for adversaries and fire at them, all things being equal, so Dengler needs to rush to stay away from death. Since local people most likely saw the smoke as well, Dengler and Martin choose to leave previously. They're found. Martin is excessively powerless and Dengler needs to assist him with moving around, so in the end they choose to give up at the closest town. They show they have nothing but good intentions and ask for food, but the locals are distraught to see the foe and promptly kill Martin. Irate, Dengler takes out his cleaver and waves it around in an insane state, so when the townspeople step back in dread, he removes Martin's shoe and runs. The residents are before long coming after him, yet Dengler figures out how to conceal in the shrubs. As days pass, depletion and starvation start making Dengler insane, and he starts fantasizing that Martin's phantom is with him. Dengler remains nearby the riverbank, and at whatever point he sees local people, he hangs tight for them to be gone, and afterward takes any drops of food they may be abandoned. On different days he chases creatures, getting to the place where he even catches a snake to eat it crude. One morning, a US scout plane flies by, and Dengler waves an enormous leaf like in the video. The plane at first appears to overlook him, yet soon two helicopters show up, lastly salvage Dengler. A few